Into this video, we're going to see part 1 of how to set up a CSV file parser ETL in BHCO. If you already know about vertical dataset structure, you can directly go to part 2. The CSV file parser uses the sys.dat or workload.dat data vertical format. This is a simple representation of its structure. The dataset has some key columns that need to be present. One is the timestamp of the samples that represents the starting point of the sample, a duration that represents the validity of the sample in seconds, so 60 seconds for minute duration, 300 seconds for 5-minute resolution, 3600 for 1 hour resolution, 400 for 1 day resolution. The important thing to note is that the timestamp should be at the beginning of the hour, minute 0 for hourly samples, at the beginning of the day at midnight for daily samples, the first day of the month at midnight for monthly samples, in order to avoid data split that adds additional burden to the data warehousing engine. The third column represents the sysname, that is the representation of the name on the UI and is used also to identify the system. Obj name represents the valid BHCO resource name, so a metric, like in this case the CPU util or the by page hit rate. The sub-obj name represents a string for the subobject of the metric. Normally metrics have global subobject, while metric whose name starts with by have a subobject. For example, by page hit rate, the page name here is on page, or by file system utilization, the sub-obj name can be /tmp. The last mandatory column is the value of the metric you are loading, so percentages can be represented between 0 and 1 or between 0 and 100. In this case, this represents 2%, or as integer, depending on the metric. So this example shows 7 hits in the last 60 seconds for that page. Optional columns are the weight of the sample and the location name that you can leave not populated. So the explanation of these two records format is the hourly sample of the CPU utilization of system 1 on the 30th of April 2025 from 3 AM to 4 AM is 2%. And the second one is since 3 PM of the 30th of April 2025 for a minute, the number of hits to the page on page of the site BMC site were 7. This said, we can create a sample input file to parse. Here we have a simple Excel example of the structure that we saw before. So we have a CSV file having timestamp in standard format, so here month, day, hour, minute, seconds, daily duration. Then we have the display name for sysname, the lookup name for the same systems. So here they are equivalent, but they could be different. So you can identify a system by a fully qualified domain name or by its VM ref or whatever. Systype name represents the system type, so these are VMware virtual machines. Obj name represents the name of the metric, so we are loading CPU util and CPU util megahertz samples. They are global subobjects because these are standard metrics, not by metrics, and the value. So 0.5 represents 50%, 0.6 represents 60%, while 1500 represents 1.5 gigahertz of CPU utilization. So this is the sample file we can try to load. To complicate things a little bit more, you can see an equivalent file with a more complicated structure using multiple lookups. So systems are identified by combination of strings, so by their host name, by their name, the parent cluster name, the VM ref, the vCenter UID. And these multiple lookup fields can be leveraged as strong lookup fields, so strong identifier uniquely identifying the system, or weak lookup fields, not identifying the system uniquely but giving a good approximation. This multiple lookup is useful when you want to add metrics to existing systems loaded by ETLs, out of the box ETLs, which are already using multiple lookups. So imagine you want to add metrics to something that is already loaded by the vCenter ETL. You might want to use the multiple lookup version of the file instead of the simple lookup. The structure is equivalent. You only have additional field related to strong and weak lookup fields, and the structure of the DS is name. The structure is this. Single hashes separate the lookup field by the lookup value. Double hashes separate different lookup fields. So this means system1.bnc.com is the host name is system1, parent cluster name is CLM cluster, parent host name is host1.bnc.com, VM ref is VM1426, and so on. This concludes part 1 of the video. To see part 2, continue to the next video.